Welcome to another community conversation. Uh, Today is all about the power of mentoring. So excited to have some incredible guests today. An alumni little brother, and also a brother that's doing some powerful things at the University of Miami, the U. So let's get started with our conversation today. I want to bring in alumni little brother, Julio Burgos, that will be joining us in just a second here. Let's get him admitted and we can dance. Julio, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Hold on, let me get something right here. Let me adjust everything I got going on. Looking good, brother. Now, are you in Florida or are you in New York?
I'm actually in New York right now. So I'm actually in quarantine. If you see the background, this actually one of the school hotels. I've been here for the past week and a half. But I am in New York. I'm in Syracuse from last year.
Very good. Well, welcome to the Game of Life Mentoring Podcast, Julio. We are, my slogan for this particular show and for all shows is that in the game of life, everybody makes the team, but how you play is up to you. And you are a very impressive young man. We're so thankful to have you as an alumni little brother. And I want to just be real and raw today as we talk about challenges, as we talk about race, relationships, and resources. That's what this is all about. And I just want to say how proud we are of you and your accomplishments. We're going to talk about that as we go through our conversation as
Thank
well.
you.
But let's talk about just who you are, Julio, and just where you grew up and some of the challenges you might have faced here in Miami.
So actually, fun fact. So originally, I was born in Dominican Republic, and I was raised in New York City. But I say I was made in Dade because I moved to Miami when I was right out of middle school. Started there my freshman year of high school, and been living there ever since. It was definitely my first time coming to Miami, coming to Florida overall, even before I moved here. When I moved there, I didn't actually move with my parents, but I ended up moving in with my aunt, who at the time was living by herself because her two daughters just had graduated and moved on in their careers. So it was a new beginning for me. And one of the many challenges that I faced, when I moved there was just, the culture shock. Coming from New York City, going to, previously I attended a school that was predominantly Dominican. Basically, 90% of school was Dominican back in Washington Heights. And then when you go down to Miami, you do have predominantly black black school, and it was a culture shock for me in general. But outside of that, one of the big challenges that I faced is, it was like the resources, in terms of the things that I wanted to accomplish during high school, the things that I wanted to accomplish after high school. But even though the school lacked the resources, I was still able to find that assistance through Big Brother Big Sister, through the NEA project, through Breakthrough Miami, through different community-based organizations that seriously, got me to where I am today, and I am extremely thankful for that.
And with that, I'm glad you mentioned just community because you mentioned the fact that there were some socioeconomic challenges. You attended a school in the urban core. Now to Miami Central Rockets, is that right? Is the Rockets?
Yes, yes, Rock
And so
Nation.
you're class of what? What class are you? Were you in?
Class of 2017.
Class of 2017, Miami Central Rockets. Shout out to all the Rockets out there. But one of the things you did is you reached out and you made sure you took advantage of the community resources that were available. You became a little brother. You got assistance from our partners, Breakthrough Miami, as well. So shout out to all the community-based organizations doing incredible things. I got to say this, and I'll say it out loud. It's not about competition, it's about collaboration. And Julio, you are proof positive that when a young man or a young lady, a youth gets involved and takes full advantage of what donors and others are investing in, uh, it's priceless. It's absolutely priceless. Speaking of investment, mentoring. You were involved in our school to work workplace mentoring program. And tell us where you were matched. Tell us a little bit about your big brother and how that experience went for you.
Well, so it's not honestly like I started high school. Like I'm gonna talk back about like how I even got involved with Big Brother Big Sister because, you know, it was something new to me. I had no idea what it was when I was, when I was in high school. But it wasn't until I believe the end of my freshman year, I had a friend named Anna, and the first thing she said, "Hey, like if you want to go to college and you want to get scholarships, I think you should apply to Big Brother Big Sister your junior year." The reason being is because I was in the school to work program, so it was basically the final 2 years. So honestly, I wasn't eligible my freshman or sophomore year, so I was already planning ahead for me to get involved. So she mentioned that, and I automatically thought like, hey, like I want to go to college. I don't have the money for it, but I think this is a great way for me to know tap those resources. And ever since that, honestly, like I remember going my freshman year, the end towards the end of my freshman year, I went to the director, who was the person in charge of Big Brother Big Sister in Miami Central, and I literally went and introduced myself, and I told her, hey, like I want to apply to your program when I'm a junior. And she said, okay, come by when you're a junior, and I did. I applied, I got in, and honestly, it was for me. It was like okay, like I'm just gonna roll with it. And at the time, I was matched with Win Haven Insurance, my big Richard, and it was definitely a great program. And the reason why I say this is because you know you're in school what 9 months out of the year. You're basically there from Monday to Fridays. You don't really see things outside of the four walls of your classrooms in high school. But this program, especially for me, will no it helped me in a way that I was able to see basically the real world outside of high school. So when I used to go in there, I used to see these people dressed up, working, being professional. Just for me, just to see that, just kind of gave me a taste of something that I wanted to in a role that I wanted to be in after I finished high school. It gave me that perspective. And I think that was the most for me. That's what I took away the most out of that program, and it was just phenomenal. Like I'm still in contact with some of the people that work there. My big Richard, and honestly, to this day, like I'm extremely thankful for that because it just gave me a different perspective just on life and just the world outside of what I was accustomed to at Central or just at my home.
And there's a couple of things that you mentioned that I just, again, that continue to impress me. You were a freshman in high school, what, 14 years old, and you heard about the school to work program and you locked in and you planned ahead. And in essence, you're like, hey, when I become a junior, I want to be in this program. And so that kind of stick to itiveness that you had, your persistence is commendable. And so once a month, for the benefit of our audience, school to work program for all corporate entities, it's once a month. Corporations engage their mentors, their employees engage in the mentoring space while at work. You never leave the job. And so, Julio, you mentioned something. You saw what it was like to. You saw these people all dressed up and taking care of business. And shout out to Jimmy Whitehead and Rebecca Whitehead over at Windhaven Insurance for your commitment to school to work because Julio is a product of that program. But you saw people, you saw the work environment. What impressed you the most about that work environment, Julio?
Honestly, for me, it was just the dressing up at the time. To be honest, I never owned a suit. Honestly, never like complete suit, never owned one until college. But I did have like my blazers when I was in high school, and never tied a tie basically until my sophomore year. And for me, it was just that feeling. Like honestly, sometimes I think my senior year, I would dress up every Friday just because I just liked the feeling of it. I never saw someone in a suit, in my household, or just no family member. And being able to see that, that just intrigued me. Like, it was just like a shock to me, but something that I took away, and to this day appreciate. And it's just honestly just learning how people work. I think it just gave me a sense of what my life could possibly be after high school. Is just go to college. That's one thing kind of like spoke a lot about, because we'll go there once a month and we'll have different conversations. But the main conversation will be around college. They'll be like, hey, like, you need help writing your college essay, you need help, like how can we help you? And for me to have those conversations, not just with myself, but other littles, because I wasn't the only one that was going there. It was a group of us. It was basically an entire bus of us. That was that was just phenomenal for me. I had a great time there. Great time.
I love it. I love it. And as we think about the little things that that not only young people see, but what it makes a big impression on you. I mean, people dressing up, and and again, I've seen you now. I mean, you dress up well, brother, little bro.
I learned.
And so now, if I were to let me just say a couple words to you, and I want to get your immediate response. Take charge, Battier. What does that mean to you?
Honestly, just taking charge of your life, your destiny, your path. Something that I've been doing, from day one. I mentioned to you that I planned out for Big Brother Big Sister, but I also planned that for Posse, my full tuition scholarship that I got here at Syracuse. I was during high school I played baseball my freshman year, and I got involved with the wrestling team as well. So I wrestled for 3 years there, and the first Posse scholar out of Miami Central, David L. Jackson, he wrestled as well, and he was also a Posse scholar. He was the first Posse scholar from Miami Central. Went to Syracuse, graduated, did great things there. And when he came in one day, I believe it was fall of my sophomore year, he came in and spoke to us, and he said, "Yeah, I go to Syracuse." I'm like, I'm from New York. I didn't know what was Syracuse. I've never been upstate, And I said, "Oh yeah, I got a Posse scholarship." I'm like, "What is that?" And I was like, I was the only one that kind of like reached out to him after the meeting. Like I think he was walking to his car, and I went and spoke to him. Like, yeah, I want to get your number. Like, I want to know like some advice of how you did it, because I want to go to college, but I don't have the means for it, and I think this would be a great opportunity for me. And I planned ahead. Like he gave me all the information. I remember going online and researching, everything that I needed to do, either what test that I needed to take, what involvement that I needed to do for my junior year, because you get nominated your junior year, and then you go into the process your senior year. And I was nominated by one of my great mentors as well, my wrestling coach, Coach Bryant. He definitely helped me with that as well. So that was phenomenal for me.
And so that's a credit and a shout out to Posse and all that they do to invest in our young people as well. And so as you look at your scholarship portfolio, you got a little bit of assistance from a few places, right? Talk to us about your community involvement speaks for itself. Clearly you planned ahead, Julio, as well. But you got a Posse scholarship. What else? What other kind of assistance? You need to go into the amounts, obviously. But what other assistance did you? We don't talk money, but I think it speaks to just the continuing education investment that people made in you. Talk to us.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely. So I set up the Posse scholarship, which was full tuition, meaning like they do pay tuition, but they don't cover room and board. I was able to get the Take Charge scholarship through the Shane Battier Foundation. Phenomenal org, helped me tremendously, not just inside the classroom, but outside the classroom. And I'll touch on that a little bit later. I also received the Miami Foundation scholarship that is renewal every year. And Dolores, I don't remember the last name, but it's also a Big Brother Big Sister scholarship.
You got the lawyer Brennan.
Yes. I got that as well. And no, that was a tremendous help for me my first 2 years here at Syracuse. So even though like I still got my full tuition Posse scholarship, those outside scholarships definitely helped cover those those outside costs, either room and board or some of the things that I was involved in, especially the Take Charge Foundation. I remember that I was already my sophomore year of college, meaning I didn't have to pay for room and board. So what ended up happening for the money that I was supposed to receive for my sophomore year, they actually covered for me to go abroad to Madrid for a summer. Wow. So think about that as well.
Well, speaking of, shout out to Shane Battier as well. Good brother. Shane Battier is a big brother, and certainly his accomplishments on the basketball court speak for themselves at Duke and with the Miami Heat. But one of the things that the Take Charge, the Battier Take Charge Foundation does is they provide that scholarship. But when you applied for that scholarship, the whole concept of taking charge, you had to document and talk to them about in an interview something that you took charge of. And so let's go back to that time as you prepared to graduate. How did you respond to that take charge question that I know Shane and the crew asked?
Um, Honestly, I don't know if you remember, you was there in my interview as well. Like I remember sitting right across from Shane, and I remember my freshman year when I moved in, I used to watch all the Heat games. When LeBron was there when they won 2 championships. That was just awesome for me, and to sit right in front of them and being asked that question, that was definitely an experience for me. But my response again was taking charge of myself, taking charge of my life, taking charge of my destiny, taking charge of the things that I could control. And that's important because when you are aware of the things that you have the power to control, I think there's just nothing can get in your way. You need to be able to identify things that you know out are outside of your control and manage the things that you can control. And that was just my life. Like I mentioned again, I planned ahead. Now I'm a first generation college student. My parents didn't go to school. They didn't have no idea of just the process of even getting to school, applying to school. And for me, that was just no. I had to be resourceful, and you mentioned it. If it wasn't for all the community-based organizations in Miami, no, I don't know where I would be now. But definitely a big difference in my life, and definitely helped me get to where I am now.
We're here on the Game of Life where everybody makes a team, but how you play is up to you. We're here with alumni little brother Julio Burgos, who's in the Big Apple right now, the NYC, the investment paid off, Julio, from sitting in that room with you, with Shane, interviewing you for the scholarship. The investment has paid off. Now you're at Syracuse University. Tell us what you're majoring in and what that next move is, because you just secured employment in New York as well. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, I did. So came into Syracuse, major in economics and a minor in strategic management at the business school. Honestly, has been a tremendous 4 years here, a lifetime. Honestly, like I have had a great times, great experiences that prepared me for the next move, which just securing a job after graduation. No, after I complete my degree next May, I'll be starting at Bloomberg LP this upcoming July in their sales analytics department. And that was tremendous for me because especially now the current environment, I'm very thankful for the opportunity, to be honest, because I know the things that people are going through right now. Like a lot of people are just getting furloughed, just getting either unemployed or just can't find jobs. So I'm extremely thankful for that. And I'm looking forward to the next move, which is go down to New York City and start my career.
Excellent. Now you graduate officially when? Is it December?
No, so I graduate in May.
Okay.
So yeah, so this is my fall semester, and then I have spring semester, and basically I'm over.
There you go. There you go. No, congratulations on that. Let's talk about an aspect of this show, race, relationships, and resources. Let's talk about race. You mentioned culture shock when you went to Miami Central. Miami Central is very diverse. What do you think the breakdown is? You're an economics guy. The demographic breakdown between Black and Hispanic over at Miami Central. What is it, about 70-30, 50-50? What's that breakdown?
Oh, so yeah, I definitely remember this. So, um, Black you'll have 85%. Hispanic you'll have basically 15.
Okay. Okay. And how were race relations when you were back in high school? Just curious.
Um, it was it was a very segregated school. As in a way that meaning like you'll have the Blacks just hanging out with the Blacks, interacting with the Blacks. You have the Hispanic hanging out with the Hispanics. And you'll even have a difference. You'll have like sub divisions within the Hispanic. You'll have like people that are coming from Latin America. You have people from the Caribbean, Dominican, Puerto Ricans, just hanging out with each other. But it was very segregated in the sense that people just didn't, hang out with people that didn't look like them. For me though, like there was, I always say this, even to this day, like I always like, I don't always like being, I don't say I have like a set group of friends, but like I always like rotating. Like I could go into different groups and kind of fit in. And even here in Syracuse, I see the same thing. So like that kind of like prepared me to Syracuse in a sense, because I am in the predominantly white institution now. So you go from Miami Central, predominantly black, you go
Right.
to Syracuse, predominantly white. That was definitely a culture shock to me as well. But again, it wasn't something new to me. So it was something that I already knew how to navigate. So I came in here and I gave the same approach. I'll make friends with people that just didn't look like me, because I always had a thing just, for just getting to know people, their stories, their experiences, people that didn't look like me. And that's one of the reasons I love traveling. That's one of the reasons I went abroad, just for that sense. But definitely Miami Central, little segregated, and you can still see it to this day.
But one of the things you mentioned, and as we talk about race, your ability as a young person to navigate, regardless of the racial surroundings or the racial environment. And I haven't met anybody that doesn't like Julio, but it really speaks to, my friend, uh, just the socialization and the necessity. And I love the word navigate. You got to know where you are, know what's going on, but also work with people and let them get to know you. But now we're living in some perilous times right now where race relations are strained. And historically, clearly, racism is nothing new in the United States. And as we talk about mentoring, and your big brother was a white male, correct?
No, he's actually Brazilian.
Brazil, oh, my bad, Brazilian.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, he's Brazilian.
that's good. So now you're from. Remind our audience again where you're from and how you identify racially, ethnically.
So I'm Dominican. I personally identify as a Black Dominican American, Dominican American Hispanic.
You got everything. You got like all of the above on the test, brother. So say that one more time on how you identify that. No wonder you can navigate everywhere because you're like the United Nations, brother. Go ahead.
So I basically identify like Black Dominican American, Hispanic, and I've always said that all the time. I'm never denied my roots, never denied my history, and that's just who I am. I'm say it everywhere and anywhere. That's just me.
That's all right, brother. And so, from a family standpoint, mom and dad coming from different countries.
No, so both my parents were born in Dominican Republic. I was born there myself as well. Um, and no, I like I mentioned, I grew up in different communities. Washington Heights, predominantly white, predominantly Dominican. Community. Definitely experienced that there. I also live in the South Bronx for a few years. I actually moved around from Washington Heights to South Bronx, where I went to elementary school and middle school. In South Bronx, you wouldn't have a lot of Dominicans, but you will have a lot of Puerto Ricans, a lot of Mexicans, and a lot of African Americans. So again, like this isn't something new to me. This is how I grew up. This is what helped me, just continue to navigate all the process of like all the steps of my life, in the last few years.
And so now, racism. Uh, have you experienced racism? And if you have, tell us about a memorable experience and how you dealt with it, because it's important that we understand from a generational standpoint that by virtue of where you've been and who you are, and when people see you, some folks may just see, a person of color. Some folks see your last name, Burgos, and think, okay, Hispanic, but you are comfortable in any space. Tell us about a time where you were clearly not comfortable, what you had to deal with in terms of racism and how you dealt with it, Julio.
So I'll give you two different points. Direct racisms here in the United States, I have not experienced, but I've definitely experienced microaggressions.
Mm.
Or just people just seeing me and already, automatically thinking that they already know me just because the color of my skin, or like you mentioned on my name. Like I'll have people whenever I say, yeah, like I go to Syracuse, people will be like, oh, what sport do you play? I'm like, what do you mean, what sport do I play? Or like, oh, you play football? You got a football scholarship? I'm like, no, like I got an academic full tuition to go to Syracuse. I'll be like, oh wow, like they'll be surprised. I'm like, oh, like, you didn't expect that from me, huh? You know. So that's something that I honestly, like, multiple times I definitely experienced that, but I never let that get to me. But racism, definitely experienced that directly, but not in the U.S. So I actually, when I went abroad, my
Mm.
my freshman year of college, when I was in Madrid, I remember going out with my friend, my roommate, and some of our friends who were white. Um, I was no, I'm Dominican, Dominican American, Black, Hispanic. He's from Pakistan. So I remember going out one night, and we are trying to get into this place, and honestly, for some reason, like, they kind of split the group that we were with. So the the people that were white were able to go in, and him and I, like, we were taken out of the line,
Mm.
and we didn't know why. But it wasn't until I got back to my host mom, and she was telling me, oh yeah, like, they don't really like they she pointed to my skin. And I'm like, oh, like, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, like, that's why you didn't get in, because it's color of his skin. Like, we look at him as well. They don't like those kind of people at those places. So I was like, that I felt bad. I felt hurt. It's not something, someone wanna experience, not just in Madrid, but like anywhere around the world, or even here in the US. So I definitely experienced it before. It's not a great feeling, to be honest, at all.
College student traveling abroad, getting to know different cultures, and you go out with your friends, your peers, your colleagues, and you're not allowed in 2020. Let me just go ahead and put this on record. In 2020, based on just simply the color of your skin, you don't come in here. It's sad. But that's the harsh reality. The reason we have these conversations, Julio, is for people to recognize and understand we got a long way to go. And through the power of mentorship, through the power of navigation, through the power of planning ahead, that's Julio Burgos. And so I'm glad you're able to, yeah, it hurt, but you're able to pivot and not be negative about it, but to recognize the challenge. Speaking of challenge, my last question for you, my friend, it's your generation that's going to make the change. Historically, racism is real. And as you talk about your example as a young man in 2020, not so long ago, sadly, there were signs, blacks only or colored only, whites only, in this very country. What do you and your peers talk about in terms of how we make positive change, how we move forward? I'm not sure if you talked about it with your friends there, in Madrid, but what's the conversation like amongst your peer group on how we make positive change?
It's actually a great question, because it's something that often comes up, and the reason being is because of the recent environment that we're currently living in. And one of the things that we know we mention a lot is that this doesn't get done by one person. This does not get done by a single group. This doesn't just get done by a single company. And the reason why I mention that is because it's going to require that everyone play their role. And when I say everyone, it has to be the public sector, it has to be the private sector, it has to be community-based organizations, it has to be higher education institutions. It just have to be everyone who played a role in the United States needs to be involved in addressing racism and some of the challenges that people of color are currently facing in the 21st century. And if we don't have that, you know, my we always say, like, hey, like, no, we want to graduate. We live in Syracuse already. We already left our marks here. But whatever comes next, we need to realize that we need to get involved. Meaning, you need to mentor. You need to join a community advisory board. You need to join, something that is going to be able to, you know, make some form of change, or at least bring awareness to some of the problems that people of color are currently facing. Because again, it's just not going to be a single person, but it's going to require a collaboration between different stakeholders and different community members.
Well stated, Julio. Again, on behalf of the Big Brothers Big Sisters family, we are so pleased to have you as one of our alumni little brothers. I'm putting you on when it's safe to do so, I'm putting you on a stage to tell your story at some point in the future, or we'll just capture some video and have you just speak to those who support us. But all I can say from the bottom of my heart is I'm so proud of you, young brother. Keep doing what you're doing. You're making us not only proud of you, but you're making an investment in the future as well. So be safe in New York. All the best as you complete your degree and also start work with Bloomberg there in New York. And so thank you for joining me today on The Game of Life, where everybody makes the team, but how you play is up to you. All the takeaways from Julio: plan ahead, navigate, even when it's uncomfortable. But most importantly, don't ever give up. Julio, all the best, young brother.
Thank you, Dawson. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Take care.
You too.
All right, folks, that's something else. A young man that's making it happen. And speaking of a young man that's making it happen, we're going to segue seamlessly into for my next guest. He's a powerful brother. Let's bring him in right now, and we'll do an introduction once he gets here. So stand by for our next guest on The Game of Life. And there he is, my man, Charmel. How you doing?
Gale, I'm doing well, man. How are you? Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. You got the University of Miami green polo, I think, right?
Always.
No doubt.
So it's all about you.
No doubt. And so for the benefit of our audience, we have with us now on the Game of Life mentoring podcast, where everybody makes a team, but how you play is up to you. But this community conversation on race, relationships, and resources. We have with us Charmel Maynard. He's Associate Vice President, Chief Investment Officer, and University Treasurer for the University of Miami. Brother, you got like 3 jobs.
I got 1 or 2, you know.
So welcome to The Game of Life, Charmel. And when we had lunch recently, I mean, it was just the word infectious comes to mind because your energy, your passion. I said, you know what, I want to just really get to know this brother even more, and hopefully we'll do some big things in the future together. But I wanted to just spend some time with you today and hopefully allow people to understand the power of mentoring. So first and foremost, welcome to The Game of Life.
Certainly, I appreciate you for having me, Gale. Just want to reiterate, how much I enjoyed that lunch and getting to know you so far, and thank you for everything you've been doing, as well as the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization and everything they do.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. So let's talk about your personal journey, where you grew up, and some of the things you were taught, about, race. So just talk to us about just who you are personally, Charmel.
Yeah, certainly. So I was born in Trinidad in the Caribbean. So, the concept of race is different to where I spent, I've spent over half my life in the United States. It was different being brought up in the Caribbean. Right. I think, I was lucky to grow up in Trinidad, where it was a very diverse island. Right. It's almost equally separate in terms of parts of, Indian, East Indian heritage, Black, European, as well as Asian. So, myself being mixed, my mom is half Indian, half Chinese. My dad is Black. I was brought up, to know and accept everyone, right? And I think the island was similar. Now, that's not to say that there was not tensions between certain people, that there weren't stereotypes, but I went to school with people who were all colors and race, and you played with everyone. So when I moved to the United States permanently to go to boarding school, my mindset was different. Showing up. I'd spent a lot of time, my dad's side of the family lived in Georgia, so I was back and forth. So I was playing with my American cousins and family. But so I would see all the hardships that were going on, but it was so different for me in terms of my mindset. Is I didn't think about myself as a Black man, right, until I moved to the United States. And quite frankly, I was considered mixed in Trinidad, right? Despite my skin color being darker. It wasn't until I moved to the United States where I started identifying really as a Black man, because that's how I was treated. So, it's definitely one of the things that I carry with me, and that, I was very fortunate to grow up where, my doctor was Black, our lawyer was Black. So, my mindset of what I could be wasn't limited by something I saw in my surroundings.
Absolutely. And that diversity provided so many opportunities, as well, for you to learn the various cultures and appreciate other diversity. And then we're going to talk about it a little later on, but then you get to America, and it's like, so I mean, I'll use a little movie illustration. So you grew up with like this Wakanda where it's like, it's all good. I mean, it's all the same. Then you coming to America, it's like, boom, you are now a Black man. Don't come over here with all of that. So that's a very interesting dynamic and culture shock.
Yeah, it is. But I think because I moved officially when I was 15.
Okay.
I think my mindset was that of whatever you're going to say or do to me will not affect me. I know what my capabilities are. I know what my North Star, is and what's directing me. So you can say and do what you would like to me, but that's not going to discourage me from being great. Whereas I think if I moved maybe when I was younger, 3 or 4, I don't know what would have turned out. And I think, and I've never asked this question to whether it's, teacher or professor or whatever, is did I exude that when you were discussing, or talking to me, that I did not, think of myself, as race first. It was, I'm going to be the best that I can be no matter what.
And speaking of your capabilities of being the best you can be, you're in the financial industry, investments, treasurer, associate vice president, chief investment officer. Tell us how you got into the financial industry and your journey.
Yeah, I always knew as far back as I can think that I wanted to be a businessman, right? I didn't know what that was. I looked on TV, it looked cool. You get to wear a suit and a tie every day. And, I found I was home, the last time I was home was Christmas of 2019. And I found a book that I'd, written in, I guess, a diary. And it was all about, I'm going to have this house. I'm going to make this much money. I was 4 or 5, right? I didn't know what that meant. Going through high school and then ultimately college, despite me going to Amherst College, which is a liberal arts school, and me being a political science major, in the back of my mind, I always knew I wanted to do business, right? So I supplemented my education with, accounting and corporate finance and stuff like that. And it wasn't until my sophomore summer when I was so fortunate to intern at one of the premier investment firms, Ariel Capital Management, which is led by John Rogers as well as Melody Hobson, that I started sort of honing in on what exactly I wanted to do within finance. I asked a lot of questions, right? I was afforded this opportunity, so I wasn't going to let it go by without me finding as much information out as I could. So I asked around, and finally, somebody said, "Hey, you should try investment banking. You're an athlete, you're extremely intelligent. You should try investment banking." Again, no idea what investment banking was. I was fortunate enough where one of the portfolio managers gave me 2 books. He said, "Read these 2 books. If you think you can deal with what's going on in these books, you should try banking." So the first book was Liar's Poker by Michael Lewis, who has many movies out now, and then Monkey Business. And it was just sort of the worst case scenarios of, that you hear in banking, all-nighters, working 90+ hours a week. You did a document, it's been, circulated and changed 15 times. And then when you get it back, it's what you actually drafted. And it's fun to me, right? So I said, I think I could do this. And then, so I ended up at JP Morgan, thanks to a great program called Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, which helps minorities get onto Wall Street, essentially. It's been around for 20+ years. And when I got to JP Morgan, I started right at the financial crisis. So 2007, everything hit the fan, everything stopped. And, in hindsight, Gale, it was one of the most rewarding experiences for me because, you don't see crises like that very often, right? And so I got to learn one from senior leadership, because when I started at JP Morgan, my group was approximately 300 people. By May 08, it was approximately 75 people. So I got a chance to work directly with senior leaders, which is really, you know, we'll talk a little bit more about mentorship, and the greatness of mentorship was I got to directly learn from their experience, right? People who've been on Wall Street for 20 years and what mattered to them. What were they looking at? What were they looking for? You know, what was the last term that Jamie Dimon would walk away from a deal for? Which you don't really get a chance to know in the height when everything is, you know, oh yeah, sure, take that, take this. So I got a chance to really create strong bonds with senior leadership. You know, fast forward, one of my mentors from JP Morgan moved to the University of Miami in the role as treasurer, my current role. And he called me, said, hey, come be my assistant treasurer. You know, I'm vice president, going to be an executive director at JP Morgan in New York. I think I'm, you know, flying high. Finally clicked with me sort of just how amazing this opportunity was. And I'd say 60% of the reason I took the job was to follow this person who I had worked extensively with at JP Morgan. Never thought about working in higher ed, never thought about working, you know, in Miami, but I trusted this person, right? And I knew that he had my back. And moved down here. Subsequently, a year later, he resigned for family reasons. And true to his nature and true to my decision making, he had built me up so much to the board, to the president, to the CFO, to the COO that, you know, at 32 years old and being a Black male that did not look anything like the rest of the industry, they saw in me the potential to do something great. So they bestowed on me the role of treasurer about a year into me taking that role. And earlier this year, I was also appointed the chief investment officer as well. So I'm one of, I believe, 4 Black CIOs across endowments within the country.
So you just touched on it, and let's state the obvious. Here you are, and it really speaks to the power of mentoring. Mm-hmm. One of your mentors invited you, gave you an opportunity, not only encouraged you, not only worked with you, but looked out for you. And this happens all the time in business, but unfortunately, maybe not as much. And you touched on it. And let me just ask the direct question. You're a Black man with tremendous authority at a post-secondary institution, a reputable institution, University of Miami. How many, so you said it's like 4 CIOs that look like you and me across the country?
That's correct. And at the time of my promotion, there were 3. Recently, Columbia University just promoted or just hired Kim Liu, who was at the Carnegie Foundation for a while now. But yeah, currently there are 4 across the entire country.
And it's got to be lonely. And how is that? What's the collegial spirit like? Not just in the local setting, but just across the nation as you attend meetings and conferences. And of course, things are different now in the midst of COVID. But yeah, is it welcoming?
Yeah, you know, I'd say higher education is different from corporate America, and I'll bifurcate the two, and I'll talk to higher education first. One of the things I really love about being in higher education is it's definitely communal, right? We all have a shared goal, which is the education of kids, right, or young men and women. So when I became CIO, I shot emails out to all the top CIOs: Scott Malpass, Mark Schmid, Dave Swenson. And they all responded, got on the phone with me, said, hey, you know, this is what I would do. This is what I would look out for, which is unheard of. If I became the CEO of JP Morgan and I, you know, emailed Goldman's CEO and Morgan Stanley's CEO, I'm not sure how many trade secrets they would share across that. You know, I'm now used to Gale being the only Black male in the room, specifically in a room full of usually older white men, right? And that's, I've been conditioned to that, maybe conditioned's the wrong word, going to boarding school, going to Amherst, being at JP Morgan. But you're right, I mean, it gets lonely. I know I stand out, you know, I think I stand out. It doesn't help that I look like I'm, you know, around 26 or 25 maybe, so it's, you know, young and Black now, but you know, it is, but I, at least from my experience, Gale, and I don't think this is the norm, I've had a really good experience. I think my experience at JP Morgan was phenomenal. I even had, old colleagues call me up, after the George Floyd shooting, just, really, really in pain, saying, I'm so sorry I never asked you how you felt about being the only Black person, at JP Morgan, in a room or in a pitch or whatever. And then, fast forward to my experience at the U, it's also been phenomenal, right? I'm very, very lucky to work at an institution that has the culture of belonging as one of the platforms of success, right? It's directly related to diversity. So I think I've been fortunate in that manner.
And what I appreciate about what you just said, when we think about the challenges with racism, and you've experienced it, I've experienced it, but what you just said is so important, and I want our audience to take away, that we want to also highlight what's working. This whole conversation, the community conversation that's ongoing, the power of mentoring, the power of allyship, the power of a sense of belonging. We need to celebrate and embrace that as we move forward. And so thank you for mentioning what's working. And also folks who care, who then reached out to you post George Floyd saying, I'm sorry, I never asked you, because now it's front and center. No, we can't run and hide from this. The reality of race, and although it's not mentioned in history books as it should, breaking down Black Wall Street. I mean, obviously you're a Black man in the financial industry. I mean, there's things that are not talked about that are uncomfortable. But Charmel, one of the things I say to folks all the time, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Without these recent events, I always had a podcast, but now to shift to race, relationships, and resources, because it intersects everything. Mm-hmm. And so having said that, your experience with racism and how you've had to deal with it, no matter where it took place. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, Gale, like I said before, I think I'm tremendously lucky. I cannot think, and maybe I've, blocked it out of my mind, but I can't think of many, if any, overt racist moments in my life, right? Where it's saying you're not getting in because you're Black, or I'm not doing this because you're Black. What I have seen a lot more often is the evidence of systemic racism.
Yes.
It's that unconscious bias. And, I tell this story now and then. I love my boarding school. I think it was pivotal to where I am today. But just an example of systemic racism, again, I'm a kid from Trinidad. Both my parents, my dad's a computer programmer, my mom's a psychologist, but they went to school in Canada, they went to school in the UK. The admissions game in the United States is a lot different, right? And growing up in Trinidad, you say, oh, I just want to go to Harvard, right? So, you think you apply to one school and that's it. Lo and behold, when I get to the United States, these kids are applying to 15 schools. They got safeties, they have reaches, they have, And so I remember sitting with my college counselor and she was saying, well, you need more safeties on your list, right? I don't want you to be disappointed. Yeah, I don't know, right? I'm like, all right, cool, let me add a couple more, right? Only because I had a family member who worked at a university who said, are you kidding me? You're exactly what universities want. You have a high GPA, you're a 3-sport athlete, right? You give back to your community. They don't want somebody who just got 1,600 on the SATs, has a 4.0, but is not active in their community, is not playing sports and stuff like that. And so I revised my list and, included top institutions, Ivy League, so on and so forth. Gale, I got into 10 out of my 11 schools, right? I named the one that I didn't get into because I don't want them to get mad at me, but I got to work with them a little bit. But, that could have completely changed my life. Just from this one person, it's just me and her telling a child, this is what you need to do. And I remember, later that year, going to because at the university, my boarding school we used to stick our acceptance letters on our dorms, on our dorm room doors. So, me and my roommate, we had a pretty nice door. And I remember telling my math teacher, like, hey, I got into these schools, including Amherst, and the shock and awe in his face, it literally, Gale, to this day, I was 17 years old, sits with me today. I know his name. If I see him, I'm going to talk to him again about this. but that's how impactful systemic racism is. And that's what sits with me the most. It's not some guy, girls shooting out a racial slur or whatever it is. It's that my entire life could have been different because one person wasn't equipped to deal with these situations, right? And had who knows how many other Black students were affected by this person or by similar experiences.
And as we think about that, just having the connections, the expertise, the exposure, but also in the person you were talking about that was shocked. Now, your takeaway, I want to make sure I'm clear. Your takeaway with that, he was shocked you got into these schools because you were just simply a Black man that was accepted. Is that
that's how I took it. That he was like, "What do you do? What do you mean you got into these schools? I didn't expect for you to get on." You know what I mean? So that, at least again, that was my takeaway from it. Whether or not that's what he meant, I don't know. But that, my perception was my reality at that point.
Absolutely. And as we think about the subtle bigotry of diminished expectations, why not you? Why not that Black man? Why not that Black woman? And so going back to that sense of belonging, the community of belonging that we all need to embrace, and the power of mentoring. I mean, again, that advice you receive, and so many of our littles here at Big Brothers Big Sisters, it's that one person, one person who told them, no, wait, what do you mean you can't do that? We had a little sister that said, I want to go to school. And she said, I can only go locally. She said, who told you that? That's all I know. Young ladies at Princeton right now. And so the power of one person mentoring. Speaking of which, in corporate America, you've been the only Black man in a lot of rooms, only Black person in a lot of rooms. How important is mentorship in corporate America?
Gale, I think it's one of the most important, if not the most important thing you can do or attribute in being successful in corporate America. I mean, I think as much as we may dislike or may not want to admit it, corporate America is a very political world, right? I mean, and it can be extremely overwhelming / scary to have to navigate the culture of these firms, right? And you may not understand all of these quote unquote hidden rules, right? That will help maximize your career. So for example, this person who I told you who's directly responsible for bringing me to the University of Miami, I remember he told me something as simple as, do not print that deck double-sided, because the managing director you're going to give it to, right, hates double-sided presentations. First year analyst, 22 years old, no idea, right? But it's so powerful because I'll tell you, somebody didn't mention something else to another managing director who I never worked with more than once that year. And that was the reason why I got docked on my review, because they said this person stapled this presentation. And it's that small nuance can separate you from being top ranked in your class to being middle ranked to being low ranked, right? And I think once you get down here in the low ranking, it's so hard to dig yourself out. And so again, corporate finance is not rocket science. It's not recreating the wheel. Somebody's probably dealt with the issue that is in front of you right now. Having that mentor to say, I would think about it like this. Oh, I wouldn't go down this route with this person because of X, Y, or Z, is directly responsible for where I am right now. And it goes all the way back to going to boarding school, right? It's applying to colleges. It was then mentors who helped me get my internship at Ariel, which then led to JP Morgan. Mentors at JP Morgan allowed me to be successful and be promoted from analyst to associate to vice president. Mentor brought me to the University of Miami. And then a mentor is the one who saw the potential in me to then promote me to where I am today and continues to advise me. Several mentors, right, to advise me on how to be successful in my role that I'm in today. So, for me and for the kids that I talk to, who I encourage to reach out to me, is I will sing this from the highest mountain, Gale. And look, I tell them, do not be discouraged. Not every person you meet is going to be your mentor. It needs to be organic, right? It needs to be, you guys share certain thing in common, right? Like my mentor from JP Morgan was, you know, a white guy from Grosse Pointe, right? I mean, that's not exactly who I would have been like, oh, this is going to be my mentor. My mentor would look like you, Gale, in my mind. You know? But, you know, we had a shared, you know, work ethic, right? We both, you know, worked hard. We cared about detail. We cared about the results. We both loved basketball, which was probably the personal side that made us, you know, click together. But it was a mentorship that was forged in the, you know, in the fires of banking at 3 a.m. getting stuff out. So, you know, I tell people, don't be discouraged. Like, you will find your mentor, but just keep your aperture open, because it may be in front of you, or may not be something that someone or somebody you're looking for that's going to end up being that mentor that helps you in your career.
What I love about that, and I'll just go back to my high school years. It was my senior year in high school, Charmel, and Mr. James Norris, white man, said, please fill out this application. It was a scholarship application. Coca-Cola, we mean business scholarship application. Mm-hmm. I said, no, I need to work. I need to take care of my mom. Single parent home, inner city, Toledo, Ohio. And again, this man said, just take it home and please fill it out. Bring it back to me. That turned into a full ride scholarship courtesy of Coca-Cola. And so now I help my mom, but it wasn't the way I thought. Right. And so for all the young people out there in corporate America, in school, that are saying, well, I don't know anybody. Don't ever refuse when somebody reaches out to help you, to mentor you. You never know where and that person may not look like you. Back to the power of allyship. And we thank all the allies across this country, in and out of corporate America. Because let me tell you something, Charmel, your whole journey, your leadership journey is paved through mentorship. Mm-hmm. Which is why I'm gonna keep you connected with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, and we're being recorded too. So I wanted you just go ahead and just smile and say yes, and we'll be all right. Yes. But no, it's a powerful story. And when I met you, I picked up on that, and it is so important in terms of mentorship. This show, the Game of Life Mentoring Podcast, community conversation. Here we are with Charmel Maynard from University of Miami, a powerful young brother that's doing some big things here in Miami. My final question to you, and take as much time as you need, as we think about promoting humanity, that's what this is all about.
Certainly.
Promoting humanity and being solution focused. And as I share with my first guest, alumni little brother Julio, young man that had some tremendous challenges, but he navigated, he planned, he took advantage of the community investment in him, and now he's about to graduate with a degree in economics. Another young brother going into the financial industry. So it's not just about capability or aptitude. It's about being connected. So here's my question to you, Charmel. As we think about promoting humanity, as we think about moving forward thinking, what are some specific things we can do in your mind to just promote positive race relations and a true sense of community?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Gale. And I think it's multifaceted, right? I mean, I don't think it can be distilled into one or two things. I think, you know, all we can do is do our best and do our part to help with the fight, right? For social justice. So for me, for example, given the industry that I'm in, which is finance, you know, I'm focused primarily on representation, right? So at the university, I manage approximately $3.5 billion of assets. We need to make sure that our portfolios reflect the community we serve, our students, our community, because one thing that's for certain, you know, as the Knight Foundation's study has shown, only 1.3% of the $69 trillion asset management industry is minority-owned firms, right? So for us, and for me, I'm really focused on how do we make sure that minority-owned firms are getting the access to capital, right? And ultimately to make their situation better, right? And their community better, because, you know, these firms are then investing in businesses and have influences on businesses who then have influences on hiring, who have influences on the community they're serving, and, you know, goes all the way down to the pipeline, right? So asking questions of not only what does your leadership look like, including the board, including, you know, C-suite, but what does the senior management, you know, line look like, right? And trying to get more Black CEOs like yourself. So, you know, those are the solutions that I am, you know, sort of focusing on. But like I said, I don't think that's a drop in the pond of what else has to be done in order to get where we need to be.
Well, I tell you what, and it's a great way to close an investment of your time through mentoring, the power of mentoring. Charmel is a proof positive, as was my first guest, Julio, alumni little brother Julio, investing your time in mentoring. If you're in Miami or anywhere across this country, get involved in mentoring. Mentor somebody. Share your experiences. It may be that one staple on that deck that cost you that opportunity. Think about that. Double-sided, just intel, connectivity, but also not only investment of your time. It's only appropriate that we talk. Now you're talking billion with a B and trillion with a T, and so that's big money. And so, but with that is investing in diversity and making sure that Black men and women and all people of color have a seat at the table. So we can, because you talked about systemic racism, but if we have structures set up that are not inviting or welcoming, then it's hard. You're the only one, and your 3 colleagues around the country. And so now we have 4. Again, we celebrate all 4 of you, but there's room at the table. Would you agree?
I would certainly agree. And I think to your point, Gale, I think you mentioned it. I think it is prudent and important that we celebrate the wins, but it's also even more prudent to understand how much further we have to go, and keeping that strategy and that future in mind is going to be critical.
Well, Charmel, we will be talking, as you well know.
We definitely will.
We are so impressed with who you are, what you stand for, and what you're doing. We're so pleased to have you in that position of authority at the University of Miami. And for all those listening in today, please get involved. Mentoring is a powerful thing. You mentioned it a few times. People saw your potential. Our mission at Big Brothers Big Sisters is to ignite, to create and support those one-to-one mentoring relationships that ignite the power and promise of our youth. You're a powerful brother with tremendous promise. I'm just glad to call you one of my friends, brother.
Appreciate it. Right back at you, Gale. Thank you. Thank you for setting a great example for everyone.
It's my pleasure. It is absolutely my pleasure. So thank you for joining us today here on the Game of Life Mentoring Podcast, where everybody makes the team, but how you play is up to you. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Make sure that everyone has a seat at the table. But most importantly, make sure we promote humanity in all that we do. That's a wrap for today, Charmel. Take care, my friend.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye now.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. That's a wrap. We'll see you next month.